Yes, Timothy. It's been almost a week since we last had our first conversation about the NSSF performance review. And from the feedback we have got, we see there is always a need to have some of these topics and some of these conversations for the wider audience, but also for most of us when we're shaping out our opinions and our avenues on how we understand certain things. And as I was preparing for this week for the conversation we should have, I was asking myself, what should we talk about? And then two things came to my mind. The first one was what was happening over the last week, the capital chicken scam that shaped almost the whole conversation for the whole week. And that question we asked, but why does this keep happening? The second thing, and we had an amazing conversation on that with Jean last week. And the second thing is we always talk about one important thing in our finance world, financial literacy. But what it is, where should we go it? And today I thought we should talk about financial literacy in the sense of a child, in the sense of a young person, someone who is below 18 in different ways. So I'm happy to have you today. Last time you hosted me, today we're going to co-host this and have an amazing conversation. But for those who are listening to us, who are tuned in wherever you are, good evening. My name is Alex Kakande. I'm a finance and investment analyst, and I talk a lot about capital markets in Uganda and investments and finance. Please introduce yourself to our viewers, then we can kick it off.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you from wherever you are seated watching this video. And as Alex has already said, I'm by the names of Timothy Ahumuza, someone who is also very, very interested in the investments and as well as analyzing how we can get better in Uganda in this topic of investments. And I'm happy to have this conversation with you, Alex. And I know for a parent out there, just tighten your seatbelt. This conversation is for you. And for a future parent as well, this conversation is for you.
Definitely.
For you who has a nephew or niece, this conversation is for you.
Definitely.
I think it's for everyone, yeah.
And I think it's always very, very good, very, very important, the retrospective review of certain things we hear. When you, even if you don't have a child, or even if you have a child right now, and you start to get certain information, certain knowledge, like how would it have played out if I knew that before? Or if my parent knew that, to play it out for that. And before even kick off in this conversation, what I do, one of my mental models, I do a lot of retrospective review. When something happens, good or bad, or when I find something, I tend to say, how would it have been if I knew this a year ago? If I knew this 10 years ago? Because it sits on that retrospective review sits on the core of compounding, of decisions, compounding of everything, of which in finance and investments, compounding is very good. But let us start we all work in finance, we all work in investments. We are based in Bermuda, one of the best places to be in when you're in finance and investment world. And I know we started our career 7 years ago with the amazing firm of KPMG. And someone might think when they listen to us that our shaping of our knowledge might have started 7 years ago. It started our career in finance, but it might have been different. And that's why I'm going to pose to you the first question is, when you're growing up, when did you start understanding finance? When you're growing up, was there certain activities, certain work you did at home that shaped your understanding of money matters, understanding of finance, understanding of investments? Because our viewers will want to know, at what point, because we are talking about for the kids, at what point do you get into the finance world? Is it at when you started 7 years ago with KPMG, or is it something you can trace back at the beginning? Yes.
So there are very many different events around, I would say, my life that could have pulled me into finance. And a number of them might not have been that significant, just snippets, especially when you've grown up in our setting in Africa. There's not really that hard conversation on money, numbers, finances, or this is your limit. Because our parents take it as if they are supposed to take care of us until they get you out of university. After university, that's when they wash their hands clean.
And you are done. If you're the elder child, they're like, okay, you are done, but please come pick the fifth one and go with them.
And take care of them. And But if I'm to look back, I
Mm.
could say one of the first moments where I actually made some money for me was when I was about 6-7 years, if you remember back in the day.
Yes, yes.
Whether you went to a school in Kampala or wherever,
Mm.
school holidays were compulsory for you to go back to your village, and for me it was Rukunjiri.
Yeah.
So I was about 6-7 years, and if you know what happened in the villages was you plant, it grows, you harvest.
Yes,
And
yes.
this was a harvest season for onions at the time in our home there back in Rushange.
Deep in the village.
Hardcore names,
Yeah, I remember the trip there.
yes. So when we harvested these onions, as children, we were always allowed to participate in these agriculture activities, regardless of whether it's for selling or for eating. So as we were harvesting, I think we got an idea as kids, let's bundle up some of the things that we are picking out, and then we can sell them to other households that have not harvested onions.
Yeah.
So when we talked to our mom at the time, she's like, okay, it's okay, you can get a basket, collect yours, and you can sell, no one will stop you.
Yeah.
That excited us a lot. So
Yeah.
so we got our basket to about 3 kids at the time, me, a young brother, and another colleague of ours who were always playing with. So we get our basket, we move from house to house, and I think for most of the households we went with our basket.
Yeah.
They only bought from us out of pity or just to entice us, or it was just an exciting thing to see kids trying to sell something.
I see.
And for a number of them, maybe because they knew our family, they just supported the purchase or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think for us, that was the first money we ever made as kids. For me, that was the first time I ever interfaced with business or whatever it is. And unfortunately, as soon as we made the sale, we also walked to the shop to spend the money. So it was 100%
in and out.
In and out, yeah. So
you might as well have eaten the maize yourself.
Yeah,
Way. You would have. Which
and for me, that sort of resonates with, was that a lesson I should have picked up and maybe realized at every harvest that we have? Should I keep asking our mother for, can we sell a bit? Can we sell a bit? Can we sell a bit? Maybe that's something that could have motivated me further. Or if my mom had seen it as a lesson and she had told herself, what if for every time we harvest, I let these kids try to sell some of these things so that they learn something? But I think for her, she took it as we are just playing and what it was. So if it was something that was developed further, it could have picked up for me.
Yeah.
So maybe if I'm to ask you, Alex, for you, when you look back in your memories, is there anything like that for you?
And I will start from what you talked about, from that perspective of where you were doing it for the fun of it, you had to do it. Then for me, when I think about almost the same thing, it goes back to around 1999, 2000. When I was around very young, around 8-9 years, coming of age, a vibrant young man, very stubborn and everything. And I remember for those who grew up back in the villages, all over Uganda, there used to be those markets. They collect once a week in a district, and we had one in December. It was to be in Mateta every Saturday, and it's so funny that not so funny. It's so profound that I still vividly remember every single Saturday. My mom used to make pancakes, put them in a bag or a bucket, and give them to me, and I go out to sell. And for me, it was competition, man. You had to call people, and you were very young, very healthy. You have eaten all your food, and you are going to take in early 2000. You are being trusted with a stock of 20,000. I remember we used to sell 4 pancakes for 100. So now you can imagine by the time you make 20,000, you had to carry a lot of those, and you had to compete with older people. I still remember a gentleman who was called Was, because I had a lot of Was. I used to cry like customer, and I used to be near him, and I also cry with him, customer. So if he gets like 3 customers and they are trying to rush out, they will come to me like, okay, young man, can you give me one? And I did that for close to 5-6 years, until like 2005 before I left Zimbabwe. But that was when me coming of age when it came to money, because I had to sell, I had to aggressively market, I had to learn. that you have to take something, and when someone pays you money, you have to keep it safe because you have to go back home and account for it.
Yes.
When you are taking the stock of pancakes from home, that tell you have given, you count them that this is for 10,000 Uganda shillings. Then when you come back home, you have to come with it and balance it and count how much.
Yes.
And when you have made a good sale, all of them have been sold, they will give you an extra 500, and you're happy. And to me, that was the profound memory I have. And I know I ended up doing a few extra things. When I went to secondary, I used to sell daddies at Lubiri.
Yeah.
When I went to university, I used to sell daddies at university. I even named them Zandra daddies, and most of my friends used to support me. When I used to go to class at School of Statistics, they used to say, Alex, where are your daddies? Because they could eat them, and you know, something like that. And since as early as then, I still remember about getting engaged in money. Most people who grew up in farming world, they used to see that. And you talked about the farming, which I also agree with you, because I remember every single now and then, growing up on a farm, you would always see your dad selling something, buying and selling. You have to harvest, seasons, all those. So for people who grew up in the village, there is always something that triggered us to see money. For me, that was it. And up to now, some of those memories I still cherish them. There was no way of recording them, but just having them in the memory is always amazing.
I know. And that's great to hear about your story on the pancakes and then the daddies, and then seems you've touched a lot of ventures.
I have, of which I'm actually sometimes I feel I'm a parent. When I see how we grew up, and which brings me to the next point, when I see how we grew up, you have to ask yourself, these things like my pancakes, it taught us to plan. It taught us to say, you're going to be given pancakes of 10K. Even tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, when they give you the pancakes, you have to go and shop for the flour. How much flour will you need when you are making these pancakes? So there used to be a 32 book somewhere where my mom was writing things, and I could see those. The kids of these days, my kids, how would they have done that? And then because we wanted this conversation to be for the kids, to be for the parents who must reflect for today's child, for a child who is 5, 7, 12, 14. One of the core principles of finance and money is about planning and budgeting. Now, I can trace where mine maybe started, and maybe I started getting better, and maybe professional I'm doing this. But what are parents not doing right when it comes to budgeting and planning? And how can that be taught to the kids at what age?
That's a good question. And you mentioned that one of the pillars of finance is actually planning and then budgeting. And I know, still, if I could just go back a bit on memory lane, if you look at any agricultural society, we do a lot of planning, even if it's indirect. If you look back, let's say, like we are saying, our parents used to do a lot of farming, they will know there's a season for beans, there's a season for coffee, there's a season for maize, there's a season for this. And by the time they know they'll be harvesting in the next month or next whatever, they could have not written it down, but they lay it out in their mind of, if we want to have maize and beans for food in October, we need to have planted in January. Now, I know this might not apply to you who wakes up every day and you drive to town and you have your kids going to some of these fancy schools or whatever. What does this similar situation look like for you when it comes to planning and budgeting? And I think for me, it's as simple as going back, let's say, most of us at the beginning of the year, or even mid-year, I don't know, there's usually some form of goals we set as parents. Like you sit down, you're like, this year, we're going to buy a plot of land, like a 50 by 100 in Chiwenda. And usually the price is this, what. So you do some sort of planning as a parent. You're going to get this, or if you have a child who is about to start school, you tell yourself, I need to set aside this amount of money and things like that. Now, if you as a parent who is watching this, in most cases, you've been doing this planning all in your head. But if you started writing down some of these plans of what are some of the financial goals, the way you do it for I need to go to the gym and reduce weight.
Yep.
Can you also start writing down the financial goals that you have as a family? Not just for you alone, but for the whole family. Like, if you're doing high level as a family, we need to get a plot of land, we need to buy a car, or we need to get this child in this school from this school.
Yep.
When you look at that whole thing as a family, if your child is still young, it might be hard to get them involved in some of these phases. But when you're having this conversation, maybe with your wife or with your husband, it could be good to sit down and maybe, if your child is old enough and maybe they're in upper primary and maybe moving to secondary, they could sit at that table as you discuss a bit of these plans of what are the goals we intend to achieve as a household in this year. And maybe your child also thinks and is like, oh, for me this year, I think I want to go for this school trip. So as you plan, can you add my school trip in your plan as a family? Oh,
yes.
I know for Ugandans, it's hard for us to ever plan a vacation.
Yeah.
Do you need to also put that in a plan? It might never happen.
Yeah.
It would be something you keep kicking into the next year. But well and well, maybe you could put it in a plan. In this plan, you could also think about what are some of the things that are big, the big spending items that you're going to have in your plan for the year. What are your savings goals? I don't know how much to emphasize this, but anyone out there who receives and it goes out, receives and it goes out, that's usually very dangerous. And I know for most families that we've seen on this side of the world, they have what they call their emergency fund, which is supposed to ensure that if anything was to happen, you can support the family for 6 months. We can set that as a target.
Yeah.
Can we save towards a 6 months emergency fund as a family? That's something we can add to the planning. Then on the side of investments, that's the other area maybe as we are planning. What sort of investments are we looking at in this year? And what do they look like? Which areas are we looking into, maybe moving into? What are some of those areas we can tap in as a family? And for me, my thinking here is you could have all these amazing ideas, especially for those that are working class. We usually have this idea of, I want to take a side hustle by the end of the year that earns me some money. Maybe for you it could be, I'm going to buy my first boda that I will get a ride, and then that boda will be getting me 10,000 daily or 20,000 daily. That goes a long way. You never know what's that target. So planning and budgeting for your year is very key, and we've broken it down into 3 key areas: spending, savings, and investments. Yeah,
which I agree with you on that. And when you look at the parent of this age, who is mostly employed in the services industry, you work on your laptop. And I know sometimes it's not easy to say I'm planning or I'm budgeting for this. But I don't think we all go through life we don't think we all spend money aimlessly. So even if it's every single month, sometimes you sit back and say, I earn, you know your salary, say, I earn my 500K every single month. And you know this is the month that must take your family through every single month. So it sometimes sits back and having the conversation, because just as they already have this conversation, and if you are married, you're having that conversation with your partner. If you're not married, you still have that conversation with yourself, where you sit and say, transport 20K, food 50K. Then the remaining one is 20K has to go to my mom in the village. The remaining 30, I'm going to save it with one of the unity trust. Now, we are not saying don't do that. We are saying have that conversation a little bit more open, engaging into having the kids. Now, if they are young, have the conversation in the open. Let them sit here and hear my dad and mom discussing about some of these matters. When they are older, engage them. Some of this conversation, when you talk about budgeting, you talked about setting goals. If you have a child who is a teenager, 12, those are brilliant young people. At 12, we used to understand things. Think about it. They understand a lot of stuff. What makes you think?
At 7, you could go to the market.
Exactly. So if someone is 12, engage them to have those long-term goals being planned at home, where you say, hey guys, I make 500k. You make your mom makes 300k. So this family makes 800k. When you talk, that's a full year, that's around 9.6, right? Take off rent, or if you don't rent it, good. You take off rent, we remain with, that's 1.2 for every year. Take off school, that remains this. And we're thinking we're going to buy land, or we're going to have this goal at the end of the year. By the fact that you sit and have conversations with them of budgeting, of planning, and even when you reach a level where of executing some of, because planning and budgeting is all about executable ideas, executable investments, which you're going to talk about later. We want to see kids being involved. Now, you're not going to involve a 6-year-old in planning of this, but we are saying even a 6-year-old, if the conversations are being held in the public, in the open space, in the dining, let them be there to hear some of this conversation. But as they progress, the 8, 9-year, 10-year-old, let them start having some of these things. Maybe you might also, as I move on to the next one, someone will say, how do I introduce planning and budgeting to a 6-year-old? Maybe you can't introduce it in terms of sitting down and say, let me execute it and tell them what budgeting is. Maybe you're about to introduce a calendar at home that has A, B, C, D. Now B, let it be called budgeting and define it in a simplest Ugandan way. That every time and then they are learning about A, B, C, D. When they read it B, they say budgeting. Now they will learn the word. One day they will learn the concept. Which takes us back to the third point, which we're moving, the execution of the budgeting.
I wanted to give some examples of involvement in planning as well before we move into the third one. So my thinking is also, our children usually also have their own plans. I remember as a child, there are certain toys you sort of aspire to get. If you remember some of those watches that light or whatever, as a child you would see, if you see Kakande has that watch, you want to also have that watch. Or if you notice there's a super tele in the neighborhood. I know these days super teles are things of the past. But if anyone remembers, a super tele was... It
was a luxury. Definitely.
And as a child, I remember, even as children would be there, let's say this child and that child would be like 4 or 5 kids would get together and we tell ourselves, a super tele costs 2,000 shillings. Okay, back then I don't know.
It's I think maybe 1,000 or whichever the case.
And the way we would sort of do it is, as children, you know, we bust maybe the other super tele, we need a new one. So in order to get another one, we need to sort of sit down and plan and say, how do we get to the next super tele? So as a parent, if your child comes to you and they want you to buy them a certain toy or a certain something, or get them this, it's an opportunity for you to actually introduce budgeting to them, whereby you tell them, oh, you want to achieve that goal, so how about we work backwards and see, if you want to achieve that goal in 1 month, every day give you maybe 300 shillings or 500 shillings to go and spend at the canteen. So if I gave you 200 and I kept the 300 for you, we could actually get to the goal of the super tele in 2 weeks. So it's a good way to show them the essence of budgeting when you're thinking of some of these toys or some of these things that we've been buying them. Like you like to say, the planned kids take these things for granted.
But they used to be a luxury back in nowadays, and they made our kids, when we were kids, when we were young, the memories are still so fresh. Which brings me to the second core point of which I want many parents to learn, and they know. These things we talk about are not new. These are things they interact with every single day. That when we talk about money, when we talk about finance and investments, they sit on 3 things. They sit on the first bit of earning, something must come in, whether by sale, by services, whichever, but money must come in. You must spend something because of the you have to live, rent, whatever, you have to spend. You have to save. Actually, it should be earn, save, spend, then invest. Then how do we, And you talked about that point of the kids, they want a ball. For them, they will say, Daddy, I want a ball. My kids will say, Daddy, I want a bike. I want to play the bike. These days, kids will say, I want a piano, because potentially they have a piano. They have one. So how do you, they are seeing the side of spending. They are seeing the side of spending alone. We have talked about the planning, but they have not yet seen the side of earning. How do we introduce the earning and link it into the saving, then spending, and then the investment for the child?
Yes.
How do we introduce that earning? Are we going to give them work at home? Are we going to tell them to go start working, doing some jobs like they call them in the Western world? How do we introduce the concept that things don't just fall from heaven? You earn,
and then you
save, spend, and invest.
I know this is a very good one to start with. And like we've mentioned, especially as a child, most of the time when school is on, we have earnings as a child. And usually this is in the form of pocket money. And for a child, for us, that is that is, I think, for us what we could consider a salary or whatever. And I know there's even a point where we got to, if you look back as a child, where we became entitled. Like, it's as if it's assured you're supposed to get that money. Like,
I know.
If your parent doesn't give it to you, you're going to cause chaos.
Or even if it doesn't come on VD. And actually, I hear kids of these days, like, Dad, even if you don't come, for as long as you send something.
Let me give you the teacher's mobile money number.
Yes. The most important is having something.
And I know these days there are even certain apps that kids run while in school. Whereby a parent can just deposit money. They don't need to monitor it or something. So things are moving as fast as possible for a child to get their earnings. And I know when we've interacted before, you discussed the idea of how do we structure some of those earnings to be as if we are rewarding a child for something they've actually done or something they could be base earnings, the way we also have base salary. But the way when you're giving someone like what you would call a bonus or something, could we tie it to some of these items that happen within their daily lives? Maybe when your child is going to school, you tell them, if you're between first and 10, I don't know whether that still works, but if you're still between first and 10, your pocket money could increase by like a 10% or something.
Exactly.
If you're between 10th and 20th, or if you score a certain number of points, this is how the rewards will look like. And that sort of gives your child a sense of earning, like, I have to earn this by working hard in this way, or by hitting this target, I get access to that super telly that I want, or that trip that I keep telling my dad about, the geography trip where some of the kids are going, and I'm thinking maybe if I get in this level, maybe my dad will pay for me or my mom will pay for me. So creating a sense of earning by setting targets or goals for your child, I think, is one step that we can start with. Rather than our children being entitled to some of these things, we could have a base, let's say, base earnings or base pocket money that we give them. But I think we can start by creating a reward system. And I know you like, I'll let you move into it when it comes to the chores. How do you align them to rewards? How would you do that?
I think one thing which we have to be very deliberate on as parents is we must know what we want our kids to have by the time when they are adults, because they will one day be like at our age, God willing, right? So you have to be deliberate to understand they are going into the real world. The real world doesn't pamper. When we sit back home and you have maids at home and they are the ones doing everything, you are pampering your kids. There is no way around that. And I'm not saying let's enslave our kids, no. But you need to learn to teach them that in the world you have to work, and when you work, you are rewarded. Now you're not going to go and start paying them before they know they have to now to start even fighting for the work because they're going to earn their money to buy whatever they want to buy, and even depending at the age they are at. And I know it's always a question of where they say the morality of our upbringing. We used to do this when we were growing up because we had to do it.
Yes.
Now we are saying these days, yes, you can still do that, but you can add in the component of money for them. You're introducing this for the money. The cures, if the kids are at home, yes, we live in gated communities, so you cannot trust them to go and work on a garage when they are, let's say, 14, 15, but it should be.
Yes.
Someone at 15 should be trusted to go learn a skill set on the garage and earn 10K there or a day. We used to do what we used to be called the pottery, where you send around 18, 19, you go on a construction site. Kids these days don't do those. You need to learn. In this world where we live in, they call those summer jobs where kids serve in supermarkets, where kids serve in restaurants, where they serve on construction sites, and they find a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. In Kampala, 14-year-olds in holiday are sitting.
I know.
So as a parent, you have to be very deliberate to say, I want my kids to learn the values of life. And the values of life are on working hard. And by working hard, you earn what you talked about very well. When you earn, then be very deliberate to teach them about saving. That yes, I'm going to teach you how to work, or when you help me at home to clean up, to mow the compound, or if I take you to the village and you clean up a big garden, I'll give you 5,000. Now, but be deliberate to them to learn that the 5,000, first save off 2,000 of it. Create an incentive for them to save. That for every 2,000 you save, whichever way you save it, I'll add a 500 extra on it. Right? If they are putting it in a piggy bank. Which, very good concept. Then they can spend the rest. It's okay to spend because, man, they have worked hard for it, and that's what will motivate them because they are kids. They must enjoy their kid when they are still at their childhood. Then you start teaching them, okay, I've taught them how to earn, either by the cures they have to work at home, whether I can allow them, those who are teenagers, allow them to start going and looking for opportunities for them to start working. And I've taught them how to spend and save, which goes back to what we talked about, the planning and budgeting, teaching how to budget for the little they are earning. Then you can now start introducing to them the concept of investment, which is the most critical, important thing, of where you say, how do I introduce to them the concept of investment? And it's that point where I want to, where I want to ask you the question of, how do we introduce the concept of investment? Now, here we are. The child potentially, from 6 years or 7 years, they have learned about, they are having the conversation of money matters. They have learned that by 10, they are learning that I must work for what I must earn. They have learned that whatever I work for, I don't need to spend it. Their mind is developing. They are finishing their primary. They are going to secondary school, post-primary. They're starting to learn I must save some and spend some. Maybe they are earning so little that the only way they are saving it is a piggy bank. They are starting to come of age, 12, 13. You are introducing the investment concept to them. How do you do it as a parent?
And thank you for going around to bring us to this investment concept. And I know this investment concept, even for us as parents, that is something that even keeps us up at night, because it's not as straightforward as we usually see it. Because when we were young, you'd think, I know you've heard of that joke of, if my father is telling me why aren't I like so and so, I should also ask him, why isn't he like Dangote? And usually you sort of want to ask yourself, at what point do we start to introduce this investment concept? And when you look back for us, when we were growing up, for most of us, I'll speak for myself and many of the people from our generation, if you look back, our parents saw it as taboo to speak about money, to speak about investment, to speak about all these things when we were growing up.
Things actually which we needed in life. When you look back, that's why I started with the word calling retrospective review. That as an adult, you sit back and say, what skills did I need? Do I need right now to use? Money matters. our parents never used to speak about that anywhere else. But go on. Yeah.
Yes. And for me, one of the easiest ways to introduce our kids to these things is, I know anyone out there who is in the current Uganda that we are in, is part of a circle, is part of an investment club, or is part of a side hustle, is part of something. I don't think there's an adult out there who has no inclination towards any form of investment or circle or scheme that they are part of.
And if they are there and they are listening in, woe unto you. You need to do some soul searching. They call it like, do something, man.
Yeah. How are you? In fact, we might take you out of the adult bracket.
Yeah. Belong to something. There is too much to belong.
If you're not belonging to anything, you're still a child.
Definitely. We need to go back and get this conversation as a child.
If I go to your parent and they do this for you. So, if you're part of these clubs, and for me, I think the concept is clear, push your club to start a young people's scheme or a children's scheme as a side cut to the main scheme. And that is for, it might not even be for you who is not yet a parent. It could be you have a niece or nephew that is your sister's child, or you have someone in your family who is a child that can benefit from this. So, start a sidecar investment scheme, a sidecar circle for your child or investment, or for your child or for your nieces and nephews. And then when you have these meetings as grown-ups, carry that child to these meetings. And then after you've had the main meeting, let the children also sit or have a session midway or halfway where the children move away from the main scheme meeting and they go have their own conversation. And for you, this could be as a scheme whereby if you're saving a certain amount, for the children, they do 10%. Or if you're doing 100K, the children do 10,000. If you're doing 200K, the children do 20K.
Yeah.
Now, for the children, maybe in this scheme, they're not allowed to withdraw, whatever, but they will get to hear, oh, these particular people are parents in their scheme. They are investing in land, they're investing in borders, they're investing in, maybe they are investing in land, they're investing in all these different aspects. So as a child, I'm here listening. Maybe they're buying stocks, they're buying treasury bills, they're buying treasury bonds. I'm like, what are these things? As I go back home with my father or my mother, a child's mind is curious or inquisitive, and usually a child's mind usually picks and lands. They will ask you those hard questions. But Daddy, you bought this stock as a club for this particular age. What happened there?
Why were you fighting about this?
Why
was this a sticky issue? Exactly.
And as a child, you're like, Daddy, my 10K, I don't think you should keep pushing it this side. Can we consider maybe putting it in the school canteen or whatever? You know, children also, they have entrepreneurship clubs at school. Can you take Micah 10K to the entrepreneurship club where they buy, is it goats or chickens or something? Instead of putting their money in some of these things that you as parents might think are productive. And your child will track it and ensure it works out, because they have to come back and report to the club. For me, I think that's one of the easiest ways to get children to start thinking investments. Because if you wait for the way our parents waited for us after university, they're like, Timothy, I've done my part.
Educated.
I've washed my hands clean, now start.
On to you. And they say, go for the life. And actually, I've introduced in a very good point, which has reminded me of two things. One of the best honorable gentleman, I added the word honorable, he's not a minister, but for the work he has done for Uganda in the tourism industry, I respect him. Amos Wekesa. Online, for most of us who follow Amos, who have followed him for the last maybe 5-7 years, he has been sharing on social media. He started on Facebook, now he's so much on Twitter. You always see he goes to meetings, business meetings with his son. You see, when he flies to UK, he goes with his son. Now, even that was I think the elder son. Now I'm thinking he has started even the young son. There is a meeting recently he had at one of the hotels in Kampala, and he had there his son to sit in. They might not contribute anything. Now, what they are imparting in that, let the kids be in the presence of the adult conversations, and they will learn. They don't need to say anything, they don't need to do anything, but they will learn. Now, what you are and most of us are employed, we do not have those opportunities. You do not have a business where you're going to bring in your child. But you can do what the rich people are doing, the wealthy people are doing. Let me call them the wealthy people. And there is a saying in Uganda, when they are advising the rich child, the child of the home, for you is the child of the neighbor or the worker, you also have to learn from it. So when you see what the rich are doing, be comfortable to copy. Now you don't have a business, and the concept you are bringing in is the better one. That most of us, parents, or soon to be parents, but even those who are parents of teenagers, are either in a business club, investment club, either we are in a circle, or we belong to something that is related to money, to work. That maybe every weekend we have these conversations, engage the kids to be there. Escort me, come and sit there and listen in. Don't say escort me. And they will escort you and they will not ask you any question the first time. The second time they will escort you, they will not ask you any question. Maybe by the time they escort you for the 5th time, they will start piecing certain things together. Why does the other gentleman does things this way? Why is the other person not presenting these numbers? Why was this being a sticker is for the last 3 weeks?
How come so and so's that?
Because they are picking it up every single day. You belong to an investment club. This is a very good point. Do not, on Sundays when you are meeting, don't leave your kids behind. It's imperative and very important to start having money conversations with our teenage kids. Because if we don't do it, who will do it?
No one will.
And which I actually, one time we were having a conversation and you brought up the idea, which you should explain so much, of how the Indian community, and we know about the Indian community in Uganda, how they do it. Now, for them, they have the business side of which we don't have, but the way you had brought it up was so profound that if someone right now is listening in and they say, these examples will be some of the best ways to do it for the world. Yes.
And that's a good one to bring into this conversation. Now, if you look at the Asian community in Uganda, most of them, if you've had a chance to even converse with them, I think I've gotten an opportunity to speak to them. If you look at Uganda, they run most of the core sectors that run our country. If you dig deeper, you actually realize it's the Asian community running it.
Statistically, you are recently, when we were celebrating the Indian community, they said 70% of the taxes are paid by the Indians. That was so profound, but it pissed me off somehow. But that's a conversation for another day.
That's another conversation. And if you dig deeper, you notice that for most of them, the businesses that they are running are multi-generational. Yet, if you get side by side a Ugandan business and an Asian business, a Ugandan business is one generation maximum. We've rarely seen many Ugandan businesses going second generation. And yet for the Asian community, we have third generation businesses running in our country. And one key clear thing that is out there for them is when their children, in fact, most of them put their kids in day school. None of them
rarely do they send them to boarding schools.
For those of us who have been in boarding schools, you can count the number of Indians or Pakistanis you saw in
and even they can afford it.
But their concept is, yes, school is important. Your child needs to go to school. But at the end of the day, when we finish school, us who went to boarding, we are starting at zero. Yet for them, their child, from P1, their child every evening has been going back to the shop, sitting with his father. If it's a pharmacy, they are seeing, how do the medicines work? How do the drugs work? How are they sold? How are they sourced? So they are involving their son or daughter in a business right from a young age of like P1. You see these kids, if you've had them as friends, they are in day school. They go to these day schools around Kampala and Kasero. Is it Chitante or any of those? And then they walk back to the business. So this child is learning everything to do with the business right from a young age. For us, on the other hand, you finish school at 5 as a child, you go back home, you watch some cartoons, or you go play soccer, whatever it is. We're not saying any of those things are wrong,
no.
But the balance that this Asian child is getting when it comes to money, which means when the parent is starting to get old and they're handing over. A good example is also how you saw Sudil stepping back and letting the son run the entire business portfolio. It's because, and some people will tell you right from the word go, when they used to study with Rajiv in the evening, you would be running a club or running whatever, a certain business. For us, would be going home. For him, is going to run a business. So that concept of money for these people is embedded. So it's not a surprise for them when they finish university and they're being told to run business.
Which actually brings me to the point of why some of these conversations are very important. One, we are trying to do it both ways. Calling on parents or adults to be deliberate in their investment decisions. Be deliberate in your money matters. Do it. Have a certain blueprint of how you have to do it. Plan, budget. Don't just spend everything. Look long term. And if as you are starting to have it clear for you, do not wait for your child also to be 35 or also to start being told the same. It's much better to start engaging them early. Where we are saying, you might not have a business. Most of us do not have. Our business is our job. Right? But your business might be your investment club. Your business might be that farming, someone's farm where you guys are trying to grow some trees. Let the kids start having these conversations. Oh, the other question, and which we're going to also come in, we're going to talk about later later in this conversation, is maybe you are making certain investment decisions. One, we are encouraging more and more people to invest in capital markets. We are encouraging people to have unit trusts. We are encouraging people to buy treasury bonds. We are encouraging people to buy shares of different companies, whatever companies you're buying, investing. So you are starting to make a deliberate investment decisions that are long-term. Have the kids in. When you're making those decisions, when you're having a call with an investment advisor, let your kids sit in. Maybe it's time when you're paying for your child to go and watch a movie, maybe spend some money and bring them an investment advisor. If you have 2 kids, for him to talk to them and about money matters, especially if they're teenage kids. That is what is going to be the difference for that child when he's different as a planned child, like we hear these days, and an unplanned child. And also, the decision which, and for me, something which I'm very critical about, and which we talked about when it comes to compounding, when you are starting to make investment decisions as an adult, the investments we make for our kids. If you are setting up certain things and you know they're deliberately for your kids, how do you introduce conversation? If you are buying treasury bonds and you know you're buying this treasury bond for your child, how do you buy it and you know I want my child to have it on it? To know what it is. If I'm buying unit trust, setting up interest, and I'm going to deposit some money every single now and then, how do I engage my kids to know that in this 50,000 I'm depositing every single day?
Is actually
for the kids, and they can start learning the principles of interpreting this, understanding the reporting, understanding what the numbers grow, and appreciating how value grows over time. How do we do that? How do we prepare parents to make those decisions of reporting, of reconciliations, of being the accountability when it comes to money matters and kids having those concepts?
And I know you've touched it very well, Alex, introducing that concept. Because, like we started by saying, you start with a plan, which is sort of shows your goals, your targets, and we say do it as a family. Stop doing these plans in your head. As a father, you tell no one, you keep it in your head, or as a mother, my money is my money, you keep it in your head. So if you did a plan in the beginning with your children, and your children also contributed to a bit of this plan, a time is going to come, maybe in the middle of the year or at the end of the year, where you now need to start involving your kids in these conversations of we started with these goals and targets. This was our dream as a family. But this is how far we've come, and this is where we are. So now when you have these reports, like Alex has said, from either you've been putting your money in a unit trust, or you've been putting your money in a SACCA, or you've been putting your money in this particular investment, and there are certain reports that you have that these investments have produced, it's easy for you to sit down with your child and show them, oh, remember that 10,000 I've been putting in your unit trust per month? Compounding this 10,000 over a year per month has actually produced, it would have been 120,000 if it was just 10. But look at the power of compounding. This amount is now actually 175,000.
Yeah.
So your child will look and say, oh, this is how money works. If you water it, if it's like a plant, if you keep taking care of it, it actually grows exponentially. And maybe even a year later, when you're looking at the 170, then you have added a couple of other 10Ks for him. Or he's looking at it again, now it's 350,000 in year 2. Oh, in year 3 it has gone to 700,000. Like, how? Wait a minute, what's happening here? So your child is going to start appreciating the power of money and its compounding and the way it sort of functions. And the way it grows. And that is only going to work if you start showing them some of these reports, if you start going through with them, this was our target, this is our goal, should we adjust the goal? Can we go into now, like maybe we've reached $1 million, can we now maybe buy you a certain other investment that is a bit moderate risk or high risk? Those are things you start having conversation with them about. Or is it time for us to buy for our child a piece of land, so that even now that conversation can also start. You know how land keeps growing. You're like, oh, you remember the plot we bought for you, like a 50 by 50?
Yes.
We bought it at 5 million, that 50 by 50.
5 years ago.
We bought it far. There was no road, nothing, no chances. But now that they've turned back, you know your car piece is now 15 million. Your child will be like, wait a minute.
They will learn.
They
will go on rampage to buy plots every time they market. Like, wait a minute, I still remember how 5 turned into 50.
And also maybe also just to highlight one more thing on land. If you notice, whenever you're transferring the land title, there's usually a lot of tax that comes with moving a title from wherever you bought it from to yourself, and now maybe your child is moving it to himself. This is also a chance for you to
highlight land.
If you're buying land and you bought it in your son's name, you've dodged one tax line that would have appeared from yourself to your son.
Tax planning, exactly. And which also...
And I want to bring it into what are some of the hard conversations we can have with our children here as we sort of get to the final areas of this conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. One of the toughest conversations you must have with your kids, especially the teenage kids, is a conversation of delayed gratification.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot always say yes. And the times when you say no, have an alternative.
Oh, yeah.
So when my child comes and says, Daddy, or Mzee, or Mukulu, whichever name they call you, I want to go to a trip in Zanzibar with our friends. They are 16. Yeah, that's what they want. You recalculate and say, oh, this trip is 2 million or 3 million. You might have the money. Maybe it's okay sometimes to say no. And when you say no, out of that 3 million, get 1.5 and go put it in their unit trust. After the year, they will see the 1.5 will have grown maybe to 2 million. Now, when they come back, after the year, they say, okay, you remember that trip I didn't take you, now you say, oh, manners. Because now they do this reporting. You have introduced any conversations. Now they know. It's not a no of a no. Potentially, it's a no because you're going to sit back and say, we planned at the beginning of the year, we didn't put in that trip.
It wasn't
there. Maybe they tell them, but we planned for you to put some money for you into interest, and you also not invested there 2 million. And if they have been learning that constantly, tell them, okay, you want to go for the trip? You withdraw your money. The potentially they are going to withdraw it. But they will know tomorrow they will go back at zero. And next time they will not easily withdraw because they know, okay, I withdrew all my money. My brother still has all his money.
Yes.
Have I really benefited in that expense? They will start questioning certain expenses
Yes.
and understanding the core principle. What do I need?
Yeah.
What do I don't need?
Yeah.
What do I want? What do I need? Which is critical for
Yes.
any person when they are growing up. And also they had a conversation which
Yes.
my friend, one of my good friend highlighted when our conversation is, he said, he has made a lot of money mistakes. And one way he's going to teach he's going to teach his child about money matters is telling them about the mistakes he has made in life, about money, about finance and investments, so that their child do not make the same mistakes. Now, that was profound for me. I had to sit back, I had to write it down, and I say, yes, Keith said this. I'll tell what not to do with money from my experiences. This is a core principle of vulnerability that many of us can't have. Especially as men. Especially as men.
And I think even just speaking of it, it's for a man, it's even hard even just getting vulnerable with your wife.
I know. To say I wanted to buy some land, but they duped me.
Yeah.
Yet they might also be hiding something that duped them.
Yes.
So if we can start to have deliberate conversation, and it goes to the core of 3 things we have talked about, having open conversations at home in the good things, but also for the mistakes we have made in money.
Because that's even more important.
Deliberate conversations about with your child on the mistakes you have made. I was duped in Telex free. I'm not proud of it, but I paid my dues. My child should know about that experience.
I know.
So they can, and they know what the red flags, and they know what the experience was and how painful I felt it. For them to always know, if anyone comes and sells them something, they can easily know it. People have made so many mistakes. You have made mistakes maybe in your career, you have made mistakes in your investment. You spent money you didn't have to spend. You send money to the wrong person. You did all those mistakes. Can we be fine? And it's not easy in our society. I'm not saying it's easy, not even for me. Not at all. Even when I was reflecting about it, I said, how do I incorporate this in my structures of the investment decision I want to have with my boys?
Yeah.
I ask myself, how do you be humble now
to actually
have these conversations, especially for teenage kids? There should be no way, no shame for you to speak about this. Now, there are people who write books, who write memos, and they talk about these different things, and they say, I made this, they did me this, I didn't pay taxes. Yes. But instead of allowing the world to teach your child about everything that can go wrong, maybe start using your experiences. Have you lost something? Have you, right now we are seeing a lot of bank foreclosures of people's properties.
I know.
Those families should be able to explain some of these hard conversations.
And usually, as children, the first time you see it is the day the bank is at the door. Yet, if you knew that we are starting to go down,
you mentally prepare. You start mentally preparing this child. If it means even telling them
downsizing on a certain
exactly, you start bringing it in such a way that okay, it's because of this. Even if you play around it, you sugarcoat it, but they get to know it and you unpackage it slowly instead of hitting them up on the head. So that was for me, and I cannot even add on to anything. If any parent can take anything out from this, would be if you can have open conversations, that would be a very big win. And as you have open conversations about money and investments, you are going to make a lot of mistakes. Please have money matters. Have those daft decisions with your kids to ensure they know what can go wrong, they know what you have done wrong, and they can learn from that. Any closing remarks?
I know this topic is very, very wide, and it's usually very hard to get to the end of it in 1 hour. There are very many things we could have gone into, very many areas we could have broken into. But the good thing is these conversations keep continuing, and we shall keep updating some of these conversations as we discover different new ways and other ways, because we want to help you out there to see that you structure your life in a better way than you would have been without some of these conversations.
Yeah.
And as I close, I just want to say one thing. Most of the time, our kids, what they see, monkey see, monkey do. I know that's usually how someone summarizes. What they see us do, in most cases, that's what they will repeat. We are their first role models. So if we want to set certain principles for them, if we are not practicing those principles, let's not even waste time expecting them to practice this. I know there could be a chance that some of these things maybe bypass us and they reach them maybe at school or whatever, but the easiest way for them is to emulate what they see you doing. So if you're a parent who is getting involved in all these areas that we've talked about, it will be very easy for your child to emulate these characteristics, especially even when they're at school. They'll be the ones teaching the other kids, they'll be the ones leading in all these areas or whatever it is. So let's work hard to ensure that most of these principles, we practice them first and then see, and then when our children see us practicing these, they'll be able to put them into play. So that's what I'll conclude with. Yeah.
My final submission is going to be, the parents must be deliberate. My final submission is, the parents, when it comes to money matters, if you're preparing your child for the future, we have seen this world is not easy. And when you have money matters in a fairly good position, you start having a better life, in a better position in life. So prepare your child. Have these open conversations. Do it the right way. Do not let the world to be there to teach your kids about money. The cost of that might be very, very steep. Let's engage our kids in that. Let's teach them about some of these things. Let's not let the school be the one to teach you though. And it's always amazing. If someone has a question, they should send it out. We shall prepare for them. And we have talked about so many things: budgeting, investing, savings. We're going to break it down. And we're going to be very deliberate to always link in a part of the child, what you can easily do for that. Otherwise, for our viewers, for our followers, thank you so much. We appreciate your support, and the views you have watched in this video are the views of Alex and Timothy, not any of the organization we are affiliated with. And if you have any question or any submissions, please reach out on our handles or on our emails, and we shall be happy. Thank you so much. Have a good evening or a good morning, wherever you are. Thank you.